you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
absolutely. Thanks for joining me all the way from the Netherlands.
That's the beauty of social media, isn't it? That we can connect literally
Yeah.
from everywhere, and that's amazing. I saw someone said, "Yeah, from Germany too." Hey, hello.
So, yeah, so today we're going to converge on the nervous system. We're going to talk about how it impacts people just from a pain standpoint, from an emotion standpoint, what you do, what I do, where there's overlap, just whatever we can come to. So what how did you become a psychologist, and the population that you work with, how did you realize that trauma is really what you need to explore?
I make a long story very short because there's always everyone. We all have a story, but I always was a psychologist. That was always my thing. But trauma in itself became a personal thing, a personal mission, because I've been through trauma myself. And in my work as a psychologist, I already noticed, and maybe that you can also maybe relate, and that's why I find your work also incredibly important, is I noticed that talking alone is not really helpful. It's helpful in the first instance to get the self awareness, but a lot of times it doesn't help entirely from when it comes from a standpoint of healing, change.
Mm,
There's physical impact, of course, that I always noticed, and I noticed people need something else. They need more. And then when I went through my own traumas, I noticed, yeah, that whatever I've learned is not enough. And I deep dove into what worked and more the holistic work, the yeah, also the work of what the body means. And I'm generally a mind body, that's what I would say, psychologist at this point, because I really believe
mm,
we need to find nervous system safety first. And there's a lot of nervous system quote unquote healing that's needed in order to do the psychological part of like change things. We need to feel things in order to believe it, and then we can think differently. And that's how, for me, the healing work also really works. But I'm curious, what's your
mm.
standpoint on it? Because trauma is quite a word, and people always like, "Oh, I don't have trauma." I see it as a psychologist a lot of times in physical pain, in these
Yeah.
nagging pains. Do you see reoccurring things happening in
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. So, um, just to your point about you can't just talk about it, what I've learned and from what I understand, the neuroscience says, in order to make change to the nervous system, you really need to be obsessed with that change. Like you need to pursue it with intensity. You need to pursue it with intention. You need reps. You have to be obsessed with the desire to change. And that's the same thing with me for people who really want to get out of pain and figure it out. And reading a book, a self-help book, or learning about either something physical or trauma is one way to enter the world. But just to your point, it doesn't make the change because it's only information, and it's only in some ways entertaining. But if it needs to be those reps, those obsessions, those and actually if you want to change your nervous system, when you're fatigued and tired and you fight through that to make the change, that's when your nervous system will hold on to changes the most. The neuroplasticity can adapt the most when you just fight through those
Yes.
doors you have to
Love
get
that.
through.
Yes.
And so, I just thought it was a great point that you opened with. For me, yeah, what I see with people, we know that the nervous system, in terms of healing pain, is half of it. Sometimes it's all of it, sometimes it's less than half of it. But your body sends signals to the brain interprets it and decides what you experience. And if your nervous system is misinterpreting signals, or there's emotions behind it, and worry, fear, focus, confusion, it it you start producing more pain in the absence of physical injury. And when it comes to trauma itself, I deal with that sometimes, only sometimes. Some people may, and this is something that why I wanted to have this conversation with you. Those traumas, I want to hear what you've learned about how they impact people present day. For my population, sometimes it is that's producing the pain, but in my population, most of the time, it's not trauma. Many of the people tell me, like, I was completely fine my whole life. Like, I don't have trauma that I'm aware of, but I had just had this injury, and it started, and then it didn't go away, and then it worried me, and it kept not going away. And now I can't stop thinking about it. I'm worried about it. I'm confused. So it's more of like a newer onset, but the nervous system is still behind that. So I think it is two different things.
That I agree with. And sometimes it can also become a health anxiety.
Mhm.
that you're kind of thinking about, obsessing over the injury. But it's
Yeah.
also from my take, it is also a form of trauma,
Mhm.
because you have felt something, and you've created trauma. Sometimes are felt, let's say, quote unquote, it's very simply said, it's more deeper than that, negative experiences that your brain has a
That's
takeaway
fair.
from. And
Right.
it's like, oh, I acknowledge this, and it registers this as a protector, that it doesn't want this. May it be physical pain, may it be an event, may it be emotional pain, the visible wounds. It doesn't want this to happen again. So it will
That's fair.
always basically play out that way. The problem is that sometimes our mind, what is our protector, basically brings and digs these pictures up of, like, for example, an accident, and constantly presents it. Can be the same with
Mm.
heartbreak. It presents the picture of a person over and over. It's like, we don't want this, that it's happened again, whatever happened. But it
Mhm.
basically, it's not malfunctioning. It just keeps on showing you things, and that's the flashback. They can be vivid. They can be
Mhm.
very much like memories that you hold, but they can also be emotionally or somatic ones. So that these are the ones that you only feel, and that's anxiety. We feel anxiety. It's again, uh, these protectors, how I call them, don't show up always as in kind and stroking your back and being like
Yeah.
nice to you. We wouldn't listen. We wouldn't listen, and that's the difficult part of all these things. We need to experience almost, and it's not that we need to, but they show up as anxiety, uncomfortableness, for some panic, in order that we actually look inward and we start doing a little bit more the work. And the work can be, for example, how I see it with you, or with me, or I did it together.
Right. So are you saying, um, like these negative emotions like anxiety or stress, um, or some of the other ones you listed, those are the protectors, meaning that they're trying to give you a sign that like we need to look inward at something, or did I get that wrong?
They can be viewed as signs, but also that's where we look into, like, what does the nervous system store, right?
So
Trauma, it's not trauma, it's actually stress. It registers stress and it keeps on repeating things. And these are the flashbacks. If we don't look into them and, let's say, not work with them, and the work can be somatic work, it can be a physically body impacted sort
yeah,
of therapy, it can be a lot of things. But if we don't deal with it, it keeps on showing up, because it's almost something that had created a loop. It's like, it can be a thought, it can be a smell, it can be any trigger, anything
yeah,
that basically triggers our body to feel a certain way over and over. I had an interesting
a
story of
subconscious,
someone.
a
Yes,
subconscious experience.
yes,
And before you get into that story, what is
yeah,
the protector that you referred to?
the brain. Your brain is a protector and
Okay.
presents, for example, pictures or ways of thinking and so on. It's not because it is against you. It's just your brain shows you
Yeah.
things because it
Okay.
thinks we are unsafe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Got it.
And
You were
that's
going to tell
that's
a
the
story.
that's the thing. Yeah, I wanted to share a story because I'm curious about your take. There was someone on my podcast who shared a story about a man who had an injury 20 years ago in his leg. And he was a
Mhm.
soldier, and he had an injury, and it got fixed, so he was fine. But 20 years later,
Mhm.
basically, he hit his leg, but only in the same spot. It was nothing severe, but he shouted, he screamed, he was in pain, and he experienced the entire pain that he had experienced 20 years ago, basically physically again. And that's the reality sometimes that our nervous system or our entire body presents. It's like, I feel the same pain. He went into the doctor, and the doctor said, no, all good, no bone broken, nothing. But what's your take on chronic or like psychosomatic pain?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the amygdala, is storing those emotional memories. So, um, and I'm preaching to the choir, but basically, as we know, like the amygdala, the strongest memories have emotions tied to them. So, like, and that's for a reason, right? So, if you're driving a car like around a bend, and someone was on the shoulder, and you had to quickly go around them real quick. That was a quick memory, or a quick experience. It was emotionally charged because it was dangerous. And every time you come around that bend, you're going to remember that moment in time. You're going to always think about, remember that time I almost hit that guy. But When you just drive by another turn up the road and nothing happens, you don't remember like the sign on the side of the street or the tree over there or anything, because there's no emotion. There's no emotion tied to it, because it's like relatively meaningless to your survival. So when you have injuries like that, he had a massive injury. It impacted his life in some way. That the brain stored that as like, well, let's file that away because we want to use that information as something to avoid something in the future. We want to. So now all of a sudden you have that same thing that your brain recognizes as similar, and your brain instantly, it's a direct connection into the brain. So I just think it has, a lot of these things have more relevance on them, or importance that have been placed on them for one reason or another. I think sometimes it probably doesn't make sense, because sometimes you may have two people that do the same thing and tweak their neck in the same way. For one person it goes away, then the other person it stays. Why did it stay? It could be like an example that I just gave, where it's your brain is saying for some reason that other person's brain was heightened and is more cautious, or stores that as something that was more threatening. Could be. Or it can start with a physical component, like maybe the person where that pain lingered, it really did injure or irritate them in some other way, and it just set off this like kind of what I was saying before, how everybody doesn't have that emotional trigger or that traumatic trigger. For some other reason, it may have been fine. It just didn't go away. And then they worried because it didn't go away. They worried because they couldn't do their job. They worried because doctors are giving them different explanations. And then the other thing that happens is purely unemotional, actually the opposite, just logical. The thought of the intention, sending your mental energy to that area. Most people with injuries wake up and they say, does it hurt today? Yeah. Then they get in the car. Does it hurt today? Yeah. They work out. Is it going to hurt me today? Yeah. They're just sending. And you're creating that like super highway of thought where you have this direct connection to the area. Whereas I've had told people that I want them to start focusing on the other side as intensely for 5 minutes. Like right now, think about it for 5 minutes. And all of a sudden they're like, it's interesting. I feel a tingling there. I feel a pressure. I never felt any of that before, because they never put their mind into it. So part of it is just like, when I think about it, yes, you have the emotional component. Yes, you have so the emotional component, the awareness, which is the other example I just gave. So that's on the complete opposite spectrum of the emotions. And then there's one other one, trust. Okay, so in my population, it's just the brain not wanting you to do that movement again, because it has a memory just of the movement. So like you need to retrain the muscles and joints to move better. So that's another category. So it's just the trust of the brain and body, the emotions, and then just awareness, which is so simple. It has nothing to do with fear and emotion. It's just you're thinking about it too much.
So your mind is holding you back.
Your mind is, yeah, it's kind of like what you said again. Like I think all those examples are your brain being a protector in just different stratospheres in different ways.
That's fascinating. And when you like help people with their, let's say, physical pain,
Yeah.
what when you, for example, do you dive them sometimes also into their story, why their pain, or if, for example, if they come with chronic pain, let's say lower back pain, or that classic neck pain that a lot of
Yeah.
people with, let's say, trauma have, what do you
Yeah.
see like reoccurring in them, and how do you help them heal their nervous system?
So, with what I'm doing, we incorporate the body into it. So we actually are looking at the movement, and is something restricted? Is your posture a certain ways, your shoulder, your hip, like all of those pieces of it. And usually if we start with that, we can get things moving, because there's all that component always exists. So we almost always. So we just start moving, we just start getting that going. As we start getting that going, what I'll usually do is educate them about the nervous system, the way that it acts, the way that it could be partly just the nervous system and not the joints, like just education. But then we'll go more. So yeah, we want to know the story. We want to know, how do you sleep at night? What kind of job do you have? Is there an exceptional amount of stress that you're under right now? We try to figure these out and then put them into mental buckets. Like, is this more of just a nervous system issue? Is this a combination? Is this a stress? Like, just like I would if I was doing a physical exam of saying, is this a joint, a muscle, a posture? And this is probably what you do. You put people into a bucket, but on the nervous system piece, I do the same thing, because just like if someone had a joint problem, I wouldn't treat the muscle. If someone has a hyper focus issue, I don't need to treat I'm not going to focus on the emotional bucket. I'm going to focus on like, how do we reroute that? So I do, of course, like put them into buckets as well. Is
Someone
that
asked about the fascia. Is that, do I say that correctly?
yeah,
Fascia?
yeah, I mean, probably. People here say fascia.
Fascia. What's the role of it? Can you, because I would love to understand that a little bit deeper. Is there a
Yeah.
connection to it, to stress, how we respond in our entire system?
Yeah, so the fascia is a connective network, so it engulfs our organs, our muscles, our ligaments, our tendons. It's like a spider web right along all of that. And it has, what they're finding is that it's more nervous system rich and has more receptors than any other area of the body. So it absolutely can tie to memories. It can detect stretch. It can detect movement. It can detect all of these different things. And so the theory is that the fascia itself will actually store memories. And when you open up a piece of fascia or loosen it, people get these emotional releases. So it's what we do know through dissection is that it's very rich in nerve endings and nerve receptors. And I think that just opens up the possibilities to any of this. But in terms of being able to prove memories being stored in there, et cetera, I don't know if there's actual literature, but what we know is any structure in the body that is that highly innervated has the capability of storing like all different sorts of information.
Now I'm curious because this actually is then really like trauma stored in the body, in the
Yeah,
fascia. In
right.
some ways, let's say emotional pain, things that not that we don't see, but we carry inside of ourselves, and that's why people, when they do specific movement or massages or
Hmm.
practices, then they have the emotional releases. Is that what you see?
So yeah, oh, absolutely. And you could
Wow.
even look it up on YouTube, like people getting fascial releases and having these emotional experiences. But the thing is, the body is just sending signals to the brain all day long, and the brain is interpreting them. And so instead of thinking of it as like body, brain, what does the thinking, what holds the emotions, it's all interwoven. So again, to the story of the guy who injures his knee, that knee injury sends that signal to the brain. Your brain on one end is memorizing the information that it's pulling from that area, and it's like uncoding it next time you injure yourself, and so it's creating a memory. And so, but at the same time, if it's pulling information from the receptors down there, there can be something else more powerful going on down there as well that's sending information up. So it's not fully understood. So I like to think of it more as a network, because sometimes when you try to break it down too granularly, you end up, I find that you can help the patient the best when you put things into larger buckets and understand, if we move someone in this direction, do they get better, worse, or the same? If we try this nervous system strategy with someone, does it get them better, worse, or the same? Sometimes when you try to focus on like, did that come from the body or the brain, when you're working clinically, it doesn't give you as much information. Um, Whereas in the research labs, when you're trying, that's obviously where all of that is extremely important. That's the information that you're after.
And do you notice any let's say the most common issue you see in people, let's say related to stress? You don't need to narrow it down to trauma, but trauma is often linked to stress. What do you see the most common, let's say, physical pains?
So I work with the head, neck, and jaw. So I'm getting jaw pain, TMJ disorder, ear
Mm.
fullness, burning eyes, double vision, headaches, dizziness, migraines, all that. Um, it's all so interwoven. It's very rare that you have someone who just has pain here. Usually it's my eye hurts, I have temple pain, this hurts, sometimes the neck hurts, or usually there's a predominant symptom. It's like, I have headaches, but also these things hurt. I have jaw pain, but also these things hurt. So it's hard to give a most common. So it's just a combination of everything. What about you? So when it comes to someone who's suffering, and you're talking about trying to identify, you were saying just talking sometimes doesn't help enough, or it doesn't get deep enough sometimes. What is the first step in terms of people are having these emotions? if they can't, isn't the ability to identify what the emotion they're feeling something that's very important at first, but then like but then what's the process going beyond that to how to figure out what's driving that?
I think you bring a very important point, because talking in itself is a key element, in at least in my work, in order to understand what's going on. It's like that bird view. It's a self-awareness to find also the red line, let's say, of your core wounds that often come from our upbringing, trauma, you name it. That's we can only get basically gather and gain information through talking, understanding, and also challenging, of course, the way we have been thinking until today. And
Mm,
that's helpful in the, let's say, initial very first step. But then we're still in the talking, let's say, in the intellectualizing phase. We are understanding,
mhm,
we have the self-awareness, but once we have, and that's where a lot of people are stuck, and that's where I actually jump in and keep on encouraging. Now let's go into the how-tos, because people stop at the self-awareness. They're like, I'm seeing someone, um, I've been talking about it, but I see now that it happens. We start to see also our patterns and so on. It causes frustration, maybe even more friction now in your life, but then they stop. They're like, no, it's not working. But that's where actually, let's say, and that's the tough news, the real work actually starts. It's like, okay, now you
mhm,
have all the information, almost like you've mapped out what's going on inside of you. But the work in itself, and that's actually also the uncomfortable part, is, and you can maybe relate because it's very physical. You mentioned also in the beginning, the nervous system loves consistency, but people with trauma, and let's say, or overwhelming stress for way too long, chronic stress, their nervous system only knows what it knows, and that's a lot of times fight, flight, or freeze. But
mhm,
in order to change that, and also using, let's say, neuroplasticity as an element, the way you think, the things that you
mhm.
believe about yourself to be true, because let's say, and one core wound is, that's an invisible wound, is say, I feel unworthy. I don't feel good enough. That means maybe quote unquote people pleasing. That can mean I make everyone else happy. It shows up in behaviors in our life, and we call ourselves our personality. That's just who I am. I am that anxious,
Yeah.
insecure person. But the hard work is, how do I change knowing all of this and jumping into, and it's not about becoming a new person, but rather the person that I actually feel more connected with. And
Mhm,
that's nervous system safety, that's the physical part. May it be through breath work, releasing things, may it be through guided sort of, not meditations per se, but imaginary exposure, EMDR, trauma therapy, working with the mind and the body in different ways, somatic work. I love these elements. And I'm literally a little bit like the walking example. I had PTSD. I had that level of unsafety. And I had, for example, when we talk about the jar, I literally had so much tension in my jaw that I broke out an entire tooth in the middle of the night, because it was so, I
wow.
was so stressed. So that it is very real. And but you can only, and you need to bring in the body, particularly when you struggle with anxiety or depression. It all is also a very physical felt experience, and you believe these things to be true until you learn how to change it. And I find that so empowering also in the work. That's why I find nervous system work so empowering and important, because only when I feel safe and more grounded and able to catch myself,
Mhm,
then I can also genuinely believe it in the way I think. Then I think also eventually differently about me, because I felt it. And that's how we are as human beings. We need to really feel it, understand it, see it, and then things can change. And then it's almost like a little bit harsh to say, but the world is your oyster. No one believes it, but once you're in it, it gets easier.
right. So yeah, so you were saying that sometimes when you start digging into things, it opens stuff up that makes people uncomfortable. And
Yeah,
yeah,
physically uncomfortable. Maybe you can relate, but people start
it's the same thing. Yeah, it's
struggling.
like you have to retrain something. Like, I mean, first of all, you have something that's been. It's so funny, like the connect, like it's in parallel, the mind and body. So, like what you're talking about, and then physically. So you push on a certain. Like I have an expression that we use with the members where it's go towards the pain. So
Mm-hmm.
You did a movement, you did something, it produced pain. A big mistake a lot of people make is that they say, not doing that again. But that was really your compass. It was telling you something's here. Now we need to figure out the right way to do that. Now, at first, that can, in some cases, that can cause a lot of discomfort, especially if you don't have the right kind of guardrails on how you do it. Um, but then as you learn to navigate it and you push through that, there's light on the other side. And even just a much simpler example for any golfers who are watching, if you ever try to change your golf swing, your game gets a lot worse before it gets better. You forget what you're doing. You know, you had a broken system that still moved the ball. So now you try to clean that system up and the ball is going all over the place and it gets way worse. And then you can move the ball a lot further with a better system. Um, and that's a great analogy. I need to use that again, but I'm sure that that really
I
works
love
great for
that one.
people,
That's great.
right? It's like you've learned to move the ball, but now you want to move it further and you need better systems. So that works really good. So, um, but yeah,
But I
that's just
also
what I was
loved
thinking.
you said something very profound actually. You said because what people do in general is like I think it's not only when we're in trauma, but anything we want to avoid that causes us discomfort. But
Hmm.
it creates also a fear in some sense, right? And the fear lives inside of our body and our mind. And when you said, no, let's walk towards, for
Hmm.
example, the pain, it's a
Right.
bit similar to my work. It's not that I've re-traumatized people, and nor do you. It's actually let's face it, travel through it, and see that you are actually able to handle it and actually create a different outcome through
Hmm.
repetition or through going into
Hmm.
the, let's say, physical work in your case. Correct?
Right. Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, I
I
think
love that one.
it's very very much in parallel. Um, so
Someone
go
asked a
ahead.
question. I see your content. I think that's related to your content. And a lot of referred to pain. Is there a lot of science about it?
Yeah, let me just double check the question to make sure I'm seeing the same one. Hold on here.
I see your content. A lot of referred pain.
I
Oh
think
yeah, a
that's a.
lot of your content. Yeah.
Go ahead. You can read it for
The
me.
question is, I see your content. A lot of referred pain.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of science about that?
Yes.
Someone asked.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's different types of nerve conduction studies where they'll put something into a muscle and then they will actually use electricity and then just to see how far the pain can travel. And they can do that in a muscle belly. You can do that around the borders of the muscle, more in like the tissue that encapsulates it and fascia, and you're seeing if it radiates in or out. So there's a lot of, just like we know how the internal organs radiate to different locations, it's the same thing with muscles and joints and nerves. Um,
Oh, fascinating.
So, what are strategies that, in terms of some of that deeper work, if people are watching and they're thinking like, well, how does someone know if it's real, if it's trauma that's like someone is knows that they need help, but how do they know that it's trauma and not, I don't know, some other thing?
That sometimes I think that's where it becomes tricky because it depends on how you look at your life, how you look at yourself. A lot of people would look and say like, "Wow, I had a good life. I had everything that I needed in, let's say, my upbringing." The thing is, we only know what's normal to us, and there's
Right.
obviously, like everyone can only refer to what they've known, how they grew up, and trauma is basically the word meaning means wound. And for me, trauma is anything that is mentally, physically, emotionally overwhelming, and you didn't know how you could have dealt with it. It created a form of helplessness, powerlessness in you, for example, or leaves you with specific core beliefs about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
They can be I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy. It shows up in certain patterns. It can be through, let's say, people pleasing, perfectionistic behaviors, ruminating, negative, let's say, self beliefs, worst case scenario thinkings, very anxiety fueled. But it's sometimes, and that's how I see it, it's not, and I'm not a big fan of labels, it's more like if you're not happy in your life and you feel something is not going the way you would like it to be, and that may be that it's sitting a lot of times with resentment, that your and relationships are the biggest trigger, you fall into similar patterns of relationships, and let's call them abusive, or that you attract, let's say, narcissistic people. Again, that's labeling, but it's more about understanding
Mm-hmm.
that there may be something that's negatively impacting your life, and then it's worthwhile exploring that. And sometimes it's helpful to look in communities or in free content and see, can I relate there? Is there something that I can find? But in the end, I'm not a big fan of labels. It's more like, if you're not okay or not feeling that you're like living a full life, then this is worthwhile exploring and finding a
Yeah.
way to bring in happiness in your life or being healthy again. If people struggle also physically, that's maybe a burnout, maybe this chronic pains that we have, uh, back pain, lower back pain, neck
Yeah.
pain, you know it. They're often very much linked to
Mm-hmm.
stress, to wounds from our
Right.
past.
Right. Yeah, I think that trauma is a fair. I know, like, not using labels, I think, is important. But eh, you know, it's, I guess, trauma is always a word that you could use, but it's just about what kind of trauma. Like, is it really an old trauma or past trauma, or is it just something like we talked about more recent, that you had a traumatic, like, pain and now it's traumatizing you? But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to, dig into your childhood either. It's just whatever you explore it, let it take you where it takes you.
That's true, but when you first say look into chronic pains, it's
Yeah.
going into neck pain or jaw pain, or if people have accidents, they also have sometimes these flashbacks. Do you address them with them as well in some ways? Because sometimes that can be a traumatic event.
Yeah, I mean, if that comes up, that's not a regular occurrence that I do. Like, so if that comes up, we'll discuss that and figure out how it's impacting things. But we're usually very focused on, like, because most of the people, it's a newer onset. So we're focusing on what caused that, how did that make you feel, and then again, focusing on the nervous system in the different ways based on their bucket. Is it that they can't stop thinking about it? Is it the fact that their body physically has lost trust, so we need to retrain
Mm-hmm.
that? Or is it like all the fear and worry and all that? And so we really focus it in like a present, more of a present, like from the day that the pain started on. Um, and then if someone needs a psychologist or a psychiatrist or something, then we would refer out to someone to work on some of those if there's deeper seated issues going on.
Wow.
But most of the people in my community are like, no, no, I'm telling you, like, I had this injury and now it's just, it won't go away. And I'm confused. And is it this? Is it that? And then, um, and like, for people who have, some people have explored trauma or like journal, like, so when it comes to chronic pain, one of the approaches, if it if it if the belief is that it's more of a traumatic experience or a long-standing trauma, to journal and let that out. And a lot of people in my community are like, I tried that part. It doesn't seem to be coming from this. It's just a new thing. And that now I'm stressed. I wasn't before. And so we work on that. And so, like, that's the majority of people who come into my community.
And do you have a favorite, let's say, first thing that you do with people when they come to you? Is there a specific practice you say, this is something that I give, let's say, everyone who has neck pain or jaw pain as the first thing to do? Something they can do at
Well,
home.
yeah. So, well, just side note, from the nervous system perspective, it's education first. Like, the first couple of weeks are
Mm-hmm.
education and just like reflection on, like, looking for patterns and like what triggers the pain, using a pain diary too. That's probably the first thing, where it's like, we need to identify when your pain hits, what was happening before, during, and after. That would be like, what position were you in? Did you just, so it would be, what position were you in? How stressed were you? Um, and then how well did you sleep, or what did you eat recently? And we just start and say, oh, every time I'm stressed, or every time I'm sitting, or every time I didn't sleep well, that's when the pain hits. Then we kind of know where to attack. So that's the first component. That just, because you can't be too scatterbrained. You can't do a million things. You need to always just find that biggest lever. And so the whole thing is, I have a root cause quiz people take. We'll do a pain diary, and we'll figure out, all right, it's always a science experiment, right? So we're always forming a hypothesis. What's the most informed hypothesis? We're going to attack that, and then if we have a problem with that, we'll go to the next like hypothesis. And like that's what I found the best way to work with people. So you just like there's a data collection phase. So we're like right now we're in the data collection phase. And then that's and the other thing is like people very often we're faced with, do we want short-term relief or long-term? I usually give people both because I let them do some of the short-term strategies while we're doing the long-term. But sometimes we need to be careful because if someone just wants to use the strategies that relax the muscles and release some of the short-term nervous system stuff, or like even hands-on work, whether they're here or if they're doing it virtually, like on themselves, if they start to want to focus, they're like, oh, that made me feel good. And they start leaning into that more and more and more. We know that's the shorter terms because the muscles are tight because of the nervous system. Whereas if we just spend all our time trying to figure out strategies to fix the longer term, you're probably not going to feel that much better in the next day or two because like we're working through stuff. So like which one do you want? So I found a way to integrate both, but sometimes you get people who are heavy on the scale in either direction. It's just
Oh, that's
important. That
fascinating
yeah.
that you have both, because for my take, the nervous system takes quite a while to basically retrain. Would you use the same word, or what word would you use?
So I would say like rewiring the nervous system, but the nervous system, when it comes to physical pain, if it's actually in protection mode, it's going to tighten all the muscles up, and it's going to make everything ache and the joints get compressed together, right? And so if you can actually just release those muscles, if you don't address the nervous system or the way they're moving or their lifestyle in a day or two, it tightens back up. But like if you know someone who got a really great massage, they feel amazing. But if you didn't change it, it comes back. So like that's kind of you can get short-term hits of the nervous system pretty easily, actually. It's not hard. But like getting it not to reactivate is the whole trick.
Hmm. Would it
Right.
be
It's
also
probably harder for you to get short term. I'm sure. Are there short term strategies you can do to get someone like a win for a week, or is it all just building up?
the win for a week is most of the time the practical things that I give people, not just
Probably
in
like
the.
exercise too, right?
It's really exercises,
Movement.
movement, breath work. I find
Yeah.
extremely powerful, or breathing and then smelling things with a calming scent, for
Mm-hmm.
example. I find these very helpful. Um, this gives not just short term, but actually then also long term sort of relief, because people, through repetition, if you keep it up, you have it in the moment that you can, let's say, calm yourself down faster in an anxious
Right.
moment. It takes the edge of, let's say, heightened anxiety or panic away. It's not
Mm.
taking away the entire stress, but that's a first felt experience. And
Okay.
that you can pick up, and then you've had that one time, let's say a small win, but this makes you believe and be like, okay, I'll try that again. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
the nervous system, for my take, loves, because you've done something once, you can do it again. And then it gets not necessarily easier, but over time, you literally make those changes that bring in and empower you, that you feel that you got yourself, that you're
Mm-hmm.
not at the mercy of your body and mind, that you are like more in charge. And I think that consciously not using the word control, because a lot of times the nervous system feels in stress, totally, and the mind out of control, and it shows in
Mm.
the way of thinking. So if you catch yourself and you find ways of basically stopping this looping of thoughts at level of overwhelm and the anxiety that you feel,
Mm-hmm.
then you're a little bit closer to that, let's say, nervous system rewiring, to the, let's say, neuroplasticity work and so
Yeah.
on. So that's
Yeah.
a little bit what I try to do in my work.
Right. That makes a ton of sense that
Yeah, I
you'd be
like
able to
it.
achieve that.
I'm also a big fan of EMDR. I don't know if you know it. It's wonderful. Helps also tremendously sometimes in the moment.
What is that?
It's a trauma processing technique. It's like with
Okay.
bilateral stimulation, and it helps also, how I see it, like it's very evidence based. So it's like something that helps with the nervous system and the mind. It basically processes stressful memories or stressful things. Can be also
Mhm.
hypothetically the worst case scenarios that haven't happened yet. But it helps you to basically regulate yourself and process these things, that they don't
Mm.
pop up, that they don't create these
Later.
flashbacks that then bring, that's the mind body connection, then you're into anxiety or into panic again. And
Mm.
that's also, I like that work.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I mean, it's all about, I guess, like finding strategies that work for each person.
I have one more question, because
Yeah.
I'm always thinking, like, for example, at least in my, let's say, circle, it's like more in my group and community, there are a lot of women doing the work.
Mhm.
um Men are more physical. Do you see
Yeah.
more men or more women, or is there no
No,
difference?
I'd say more women, but I do see men as well. There's men in the group, in the community as well. But it's more, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Like women are going to be more proactive and introspective when it comes to that, but not as maybe the majority, but not exclusively.
Okay. Did you
Yeah.
think for men it's more helpful to do and start with, let's say, more physical things when it comes to the nervous system work?
You, I don't want to say that. I mean, generally, if you have someone who, you can get more buy-in if you start using physical stuff to just start getting the ball rolling. And then you start layering the neuroplasticity as they start recognizing the patterns themselves. So I almost like to get people to like realize that patterns through the process before just forcing the neuroplasticity on them. But it depends. I don't know. It depends on the person. I think that women are definitely more proactive because more of them, um, there are more of them. But once you have someone who has that same, like a male who has that same mindset, it's the same. Like they're just as receptive.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Someone else, does neck pain give you headache?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. So we have a lot of people with headaches or they think they have migraines. Um, and by and the jaw has an intimate connection to the neck also. So by addressing the jaw and the neck, we can get rid of the headaches. Or if they thought it was, some people really truly have migraines, but some people believe that they have migraines because it's an intense enough headache. But it's really still a headache that's coming from the neck and jaw. So we've had luck with that also. So yeah, absolutely. There's a very strong connection there.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
fascinating because I do see a lot of people also, let's say, with trauma that struggle massively with migraines.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also, insomnia and chronic and sleep problems have a very high relationship um, to pain, to pain, and maybe in your world needing therapy. But so there's a very high relationship there. So a lot of it's all interconnected. And then when you get people who have sleep breathing issues as well, you see more clenching, which leads to more sleep, which leads to more pain. So there's a lot of combinations of symptoms and chicken or egg root cause situations. And I know that you're gonna be hosting me on your podcast next week, which
Yes,
I'm
I'm very
looking forward
excited.
to. So I think we can use today's talk as kind of a way to generate more ideas and maybe go deeper in specific topics or whatever you want to talk about. But I think that this really laid some good groundwork for your podcast.
I think so too. I think I have a lot of things that I would like to jot down for myself, questions
Yeah,
that I
me
have to
too.
ask you. But I also
Yeah.
want to, of course, ask involve the people a little bit that are watching right now, that they
Yeah.
can send you or me, or both, things that they want to hear from us, or
Okay.
particularly from you, because you'll be my guest, my absolute expert. And I think a lot of people would like to have some light shed, of course, on the nervous system work, and but also particularly how it shows up in your specific area that you're like specialized in the neck, and also the jar. I think these are
Mhm.
wonderful things, and maybe some tips and tricks what they can do also at home. That would
Yeah,
be,
yeah.
I think, the
Ho
how-tos are
how
so helpful.
do you think that what's the best way for them to submit those? Would it be DMing? Like, what's the best way for them to submit them?
DMing would be the best. I
Okay, I
think
think
DMing is the easiest.
if they DM you, they can DM me too.
Yeah.
But maybe if they DM
Maybe
because
me, because I will
you
be
can
interviewing
curate it.
you.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe they
Exactly.
could.
So
Uh,
exciting.
So yeah, if you guys DM her any of the questions, that'd be great. And then this will post anyway on our feeds, so people who watch can also post in the comments as well.
I love this conversation. I
Me
think
too.
it's wonderful, and I think this is exactly building those bridges that
Yeah,
we need in our professions. That we work closely together, but understand each other like more from what's your field, what are you working in, what are you seeing, but also that we can help, and that's what you do, and that's probably your mission and purpose. I see it also on social media that you encourage people and help them, and that we can do this together. That
yeah,
people feel like they can go on and live a better, healthier life.
yeah. I love the way you put that, and I think there's so much alignment in the two things. Because like half the time that you're talking, I'm just seeing it parallel in my world.
Someone asked before I let you go, he said, Maxime asked, do you do online work?
Yes, so I do. So actually, if you go to my link in my bio, so I have two things. I have a membership program where people are part of. We have a community. I do group calls every week. I do master classes on different topics that might impact you. And we have a 12 level program for anyone with headaches, dizziness, jaw pain, or neck pain that we go through. And then I also work with people one on one too, where it's just we actually do one on one calls as well. So I work a majority, about half my week online. So we have a big community. So anyone, just check out the links in my bio. The information will be there. How about you?
I also work online. At this point, actually, only solely online because I also
Okay.
travel with my podcast and
Oh,
don't have
cool.
time for my physical practice anymore.
So you
So
got to
I'm doing
travel.
online work.
Okay, so they can find that stuff in your bio.
Yes, they can find it in my bio, and obviously I have also literally a healing course. So with a big community of wonderful people, like-minded people, where we do also the work together. Where I'm 2 times a week also involved. So I do one-on-one. So I have a big community and group calls where we do the work together, and then I have my podcast. That's
Okay.
basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You got.
the week is
Wish I.
full.
Yeah, I would have loved to come to Amsterdam. Just not on the cards right now. So we'll do it. I'll do it
We
right here
do
from my
soon a
office.
live one in Amsterdam, or I come to you. That is also
Yeah.
no problem. We
Next
will
time you come to
start
the
with this
States.
remote one. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Definitely would love that.
Thanks for joining me today. This was a great
Thank
conversation. I'm
you.
looking forward to next week.
Yes,
And
next week gonna be our podcast, so we will definitely, and you should also subscribe. Who's not subscribed yet to Real Raw and Authentic on
yeah,
YouTube or on
real
Spotify?
raw. Yeah, real raw and authentic, right?
Exactly, because that's
Okay.
where we will have our podcast episode very soon.
Okay. Everyone go subscribe so that you'll get notified when the episode comes
Yes,
out.
thank you so much. It was wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much
You
for
too.
your input, and we will definitely continue our conversation in the podcast next week.
Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.
Have a
Have
good
a great
weekend.
day. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.